Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Norvell, the Florida State Seminoles, they are going to have a very busy offseason. It already has been pretty dang busy, but you have a new coaching staff coming in, but you also have a lot of places on this roster that need to be addressed heading into 2025. Now, I want to start this conversation. This might be a little bit of a long one because I got a lot of players I want to talk about here. I want to start with Florida State's mentality, or you might say strategy, as they go into the transfer portal. I felt like 12 months ago, there were really, a lot of players that Florida State added that excited us. Guys like TJ Ferguson, guys like Malik Benson, guys like Sean Murphy. The problem with all of those players is they were kind of lottery ticket additions. They were guys that had some intriguing traits. A guy like Malik Benson, 6'1", 10-4 in the 100-meter dash. We were all very excited about him, but maybe there was a reason that he hasn't really contributed or produced much at the college football level. I feel like Florida State took a lot of big swings and some misses. And then to supplement that, they also missed on the high school recruiting trail, and the development clearly wasn't there. That's kind of how you saw the bottom fall out in 2024. If I'm Florida State and Mike Norvell going into this transfer portal period, I'm trying to bring in some more known commodities, and they might not necessarily be the flashiest names, although I think there are some really good football players we're about to talk about. But guys that you kind of know are going to come in and give you some really good snaps at whatever position they're coming into play. That's kind of my take on what I'd like to see Florida State go out and do. And that's not to say you can't take those big swings, less big swings, more singles, and let's build this roster the right way. That's kind of my take heading into the transfer portal. Now, excited to get into these names before we do, and as always, to the Florida State fans, it's going to be a really fun offseason. We're going to be breaking down a lot of commitments. The amount of support y'all have shown the boys through the highs and lows of the last 12 months, so to speak, it's been amazing. It's been a program that the boys have loved talking about. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, if there are positions or players I don't mention and you think Florida State should go out and get or address, would love to hear from y'all in the comment section. We're going to be updating this list as the transfer portal names grow over the next couple of days and weeks. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start with some names that, are already getting connected to Florida State. CJ Daniels, LSU wide receiver. Now, I think this kid can play. I think at LSU kind of got maybe a little bit drowned out with all the noise that was going on with LSU this year. But you go back to CJ Daniels at Liberty in 2023, this kid probably could have gone to the NFL draft had he wanted to. Call for over 1,000 yards. He's a big-bodied wide receiver that can work vertically down the field. Very good at the catch point. Florida State needs more of these guys. You took some swings on players like Malik Benson, guys that haven't really contributed much at the college football landscape. You miss. CJ Daniels is a guy that to me is not going to miss. I think this kid can play, and potentially a guy that I even like more at the wide receiver spot. And another name Florida State is interested in, Kentucky wide receiver Barian Brown. I mean, 3 straight years of production at Kentucky going into his 4th year, despite very bad quarterback play in Lexington, Kentucky over the last couple of years. This kid's a game breaker. This kid you want to get him in space and you want to let him do the rest. I mean, 6'1", $180, 10.49 in the 100-meter dash. And the difference between him and Malik Benson, one, he catches footballs. More importantly, Barian Brown, he plays fast. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in the track and field times of these kids coming out of high school that we forget to say, hey, does that speed translate to the football field? It does for Barian Brown. It does not take you very long to understand he's the fastest player on the football field pretty much every Saturday. He steps between the lines. A guy that's really easy to get involved. He can work vertically down the field, but he's also a guy that, hey, just throw him a quick tunnel screen, let him do the rest. Straight line speed, but also really, really good short area quicks in terms of making people miss. I love Barian Brown. I think he's going to be a difference maker wherever he goes. CJ Daniels, Barian Brown, if you can land both of them, this wide receiver room to me flips on its head. I mean, that is a big-bodied boundary wide receiver, an electric game breaker in Barian Brown. That'd be huge for Florida State going into 2025. Now, the next position we got to talk about, the offensive line. I think they're going to take probably 4 or 5, maybe even 6 bodies on the offensive line. Now, the question is, can you grab 5 bodies, but also make those bodies solid. Everybody wants offensive linemen in the transfer portal. Let's start with Pat Kutis at Arkansas. He started a lot of games at right tackle in 2023, struggled because he clearly wasn't a tackle, and Arkansas had to play him at tackle because they didn't have anybody else. Deals with a lot of injuries to start his season in 2024. Starts at left guard in the back half of the season, clearly a better guard than he is tackle. To me, Pat Kutis, providing that the injuries are behind him, is a known commodity. He comes in and gives you really, really starting good starting reps on the offensive line. Do I think he'll be an All-American offensive lineman? No, probably not. But do I think he's a dang solid offensive lineman? Yes. And I think particularly he can move bodies in the run game. And that's something that is going to be really important in this Florida State offense in 2025. Gus Malzahn wants to run the football a lot and then take deep shots. Pat Kutis can get it going in the run game. Another name that I would be looking at if I'm Florida State, Xavier Gray. Xavier Gray in pass protection, question marks. The run game, not so much. Mauler, 6'8", 340, just a massive, massive human. Has played over 2,200 snaps in his career. Is going to be a seventh-year senior. Started the last 2 seasons at right tackle for Liberty. I don't watch a ton of Liberty, but when you turn it on for Xavier Gray, one, you just realize he's so big. And more importantly, he moves bodies with ease. I don't think he's the best pass protecting right tackle, but in a Gus Malzahn offense that wants to run the football and kind of go to play action and not really be a pocket passing offense, I think this guy could be a good, kind of stopgap right tackle that kind of fits what Gus Malzahn wants to do. But my biggest takeaway here, he's played so much football. So you kind of feel good in that. I should start with this. The track record of guys who've played a lot of football at a high level at the G5, moving up to the P4 on the offensive line, it was there last year. I mean, you look at Fernando Carmona at Arkansas last year, coming from San Jose State to Arkansas. If you've played a lot at the G5 level and you're jumping up to the P4 level, those are the kind of offensive linemen that seemingly translate better in the transfer portal. Last one I'll talk about, I think a name Florida State fans certainly know, Corey Robinson from Georgia Tech. Probably going to be the most sought after so far, probably the best offensive tackle that you have in the portal. Now, the advantage with Corey Robinson is you get him, you probably don't need to add that many more tackles because you have a guy. You see, there's kind of different ways you can go address the offensive line. One, you can just grab a bunch of bodies and hopefully it sticks, or you can grab a guy like Corey Robinson, which you'll have to pay a pretty penny for, but providing he stays healthy, you're going to have a starting caliber offensive lineman, offensive tackle. These guys don't pop up in the portal very often. So I'd like to see Florida State make a run at Corey Robinson too. Now, going over to the defensive side of the football, I'm looking at Nebraska. And let's just talk about some Nebraska kids first, specifically on the defensive line. I want to start with Jamari Butler. Now, there's going to be some flashier names that we talk about from Nebraska. Jamari Butler ain't flashy, but he's a guy that you can start either on the edge at the 3 tech. He's extremely physical. He's a disruptive pass rusher. He's not a sack artist. He's a guy that, Marvin Jones, Florida State took and said, hey, hopefully we can reach his ceiling. You take Jamari Butler, he kind of reminds me of a guy like Sione Lalea coming over from Oregon State last year. Heavy hands, good in the run game, going to be a productive defensive lineman. I don't know if he's going to be an all-ACC guy, but he's going to give you some really solid reps on the defensive line. And at some points in the transfer portal, you just got to eat your vegetables. And if Terrence Knighton wants a guy like Jamari Butler, he's been around for the last couple of years, I trust Terrence Knighton. The guy that will probably end up as a Florida State Seminole is James Williams. Really, really good relationship with Coach Terrence Knighton. Needs some development in the run game. He's not necessarily that heavy-handed defensive lineman or edge rusher to hold up in the run game. He's more of a pass rush specialist. But when I say he's a pass rush specialist, I mean he can really rush the passer. He's twitchy. He's long. He's not the most physical, but he's going to give a lot of offensive tackles problems on the outside shoulder. Probably doesn't play much on first and second down. Probably more of a guy that you get on the football field in second and third and long kind of pass rush situations. Guys that are elite pass rushers, they're hot commodities. I mean, one of the biggest goals of playing good defense is getting pressure on the quarterback, especially what Tony White wants to do. James Williams can do that. Last one, and probably the most coveted one, Prince Will U. He's going to require a pretty penny, but a really, really good football player who's only getting better. I'm surprised how good Prince Will U has played his first 2 seasons. I kind of saw him coming out of high school as more of a project guy, a slow burn, maybe year 3, year 4, it all comes together. You saw the flashes as a freshman. You saw him really be a difference maker as a sophomore. What excites me about Prince Will U is he's been a good football player his first 2 years. I think he's only getting better as a football player. This kid isn't tapped out in terms of the potential that he has. Number one edge rusher, number one player in the portal currently right now for a reason. He again, 17% pass rush win rate in 2023 or 2024, excuse me. He's only getting better as a football player. This one would make a lot of sense too. And then, in the secondary, I feel pretty good. Like if you hold on to some of those guys who are true freshmen, I think the secondary is going to be just fine. I get you lose some guys, but that's one of those positions that you've developed well and you've recruited well. And so when you're Florida State addressing the transfer portal, do you want to waste your time, energy, resources at a position group that I think is going to be okay? No, I think you probably focus on the positions we need to address. Off-ball backer, certainly one of them. Another Nebraska kid, Mekhi Bayor. He's a guy that I believe started 11 out of 12 games for Nebraska, been very, very reliable, knows Tony White's scheme. And again, there's that advantage of you bring 4 or 5 Nebraska kids to Florida State, you got half of your guys in your room or half the guys who are going to be playing significant snaps who are familiar with what Nebraska wants to do or Tony White wants to do. That's important because Tony White's defense, it's a little bit complicated. He throws a lot of different looks and a lot of different personnel groups and a lot of different fronts. Having 3 or 4 guys who know what Tony White wants to do and know the system, I think certainly helps that year one acclimation. Acclimation is the word I'm looking for. That acclimation process as well. There's a lot of, I guess one other position I have in my notes, the quarterback spot. I think Florida State's effort should be building around the quarterback spot than addressing the quarterback position. Because if you don't address around the quarterback, no quarterback's going to have success with this offense. I mean, yes, DJU and Luke and Brock at times were not good enough. There's no secret about that. This is one of the worst rushing offenses you had in the country. I think maybe the worst. The pass catchers could not catch footballs. They couldn't separate. You got to make sure if you want to bring a quarterback in, okay, bring a quarterback in. I'm not going to argue against it, but make sure this offense is fundamentally changing from a personnel standpoint before you start addressing the quarterback spot. Kind of my take there. It's going to be really fun. I'm super excited to break down these commitments. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.